Hello and welcome back to Clearing the Haze. I'm your host, Chuck Marting. Today, we're going to dive deep into a new piece of legislation out of Colorado that might have flown under the radar. But if you're an employer, HR professional, or a public safety advocate, or just someone who drives a car on Colorado roads, what's in this bill could directly affect your safety and your bottom line. See, the state of Colorado is pushing forward legislation that would give the governor the authority to issue mass pardons for people with past convictions related to psychedelic drugs. Things like psilocybin, LSD, ecstasy. These are powerful substances. We're not talking about casual cannabis use. These are drugs known for their strong hallucinogenic effects, effects that can be unpredictable, long lasting, and even delayed. Now, don't get me wrong, reform has its place. If people were criminalized for substances that are now legal, that's a fair conversation to have. But that's not what we're talking about on today's episode. What we're talking about in this episode is about what's not being talked about. And that's the potential public safety risk that this creates, the blind spot this opens in our workplaces, and the fact that employers were never brought to the table to weigh in on how this will affect hiring, workplace safety, and even liability. So, we're going to look at this legislation through lenses that matter most: the people responsible for teams, safety policies, and risk management. We'll examine the science behind psychedelic impairment, the gaps that creates the employment law, and why flashbacks and hallucinations are more than a medical issue. They're now a workforce issue. This isn't just about politics. This is about people showing up to work potentially impaired, potentially volatile, and employers having zero guidance on how to handle this. So grab your coffee. Let's clear the haze. You see, this legislation in Colorado was recently introduced as a bill. And the reason why we're talking about it so much is that this is something that we're seeing that's starting to become a trend across the nation. And it has a tendency to start in Colorado and then spread out. So that's one of the major reasons why I'm talking to everyone today about this, to bring it to your attention so that you can start looking for the similar things happening in your state or where you're at. This could dramatically shift how the state handles prior psychedelic drug convictions. So if this legislation in Colorado is passed, this it would grant the governor the authority to issue mass pardons for low-level offensive involving psilocybin, ecstasy, LSD, or other hallucinogenic drugs. While on the surface, this may seem like progress, an effort to right past wrongs and embrace a new era of drug reform, but it raises serious concerns that haven't been addressed, particularly for employers and communities tasked with ensuring public safety. The conversation around psychedelics has largely focused on decriminalization, medical potential, and personal liberty. What's been missing is a hard look at how this new legal landscape could impact real world workplaces, industries, and everyday people who rely on those systems to stay functional and safe. The risks go far beyond policy. They're practical, tangible, and immediate. Now, there's a psychological impact with psychedelics. Psychedelics aren't recreational in the same way that alcohol or cannabis might be. These substances dramatically alter perception, they distort time, and can cause hallucinations or intense emotional shifts. While researchers are exploring potential therapeutic use in controlled clinical settings, those environments are vastly different from a job site, a hospital floor, or even a commercial vehicle in motion. More concerning is the risk of hallucinogen persisting perception disorder, or HPPD, or flashbacks. These episodes can occur without warning, days or even weeks after a person has taken the drug. There are no reliable tests to predict or detect these effects. And that means someone could be operating a forklift, climbing scaffolding, or administering patient care when a flashback hits. These consequences can be catastrophic. There's also the reality that psychedelics affect everyone differently. Dosage, body chemistry, and mental state all influence how a person reacts. In workplaces, that depend on precision, focus, and fast response times. This level of unpredictability is a serious liability. Now, this new Colorado bill does more than issue pardons. It also loosens safety regulations around psychedelic healing centers, removing fingerprint background checks for staff and shifting to a less rigorous name based screening. It's going to open the doors to greater access within the building a solid framework for workplace safety, employer liability, or even public accountability. Now, nowhere in the legislation language is there a roadmap for how businesses should adapt. There are no guidelines for drug policies, there's no resources for employers, there's no investment in training, legal updates, or even in industry specific protocols. As psychedelics become normalized in personal life, the boundary between personal and professional safety blurs. And yet, lawmakers have left employers to navigate the gray area with zero direction. The consequences of this oversight, it won't hit evenly. Some industries will be especially vulnerable. Some of those, transportation. Commercial and local drivers face strict safety protocols, so a flashback while driving can turn deadly in seconds. Construction, scaffolding, heavy equipment, high risk conditions make even minor lapses dangerous. Healthcare, impairment in medical settings could result in life altering errors. How about warehouses and manufacturing? This is a fast paced, machinery heavy environment, and it leaves no room for slow reaction or even disorientation. Public safety. Let's look at first responders. They need to have a clear guideline for responding to psychedelic episodes in legally protected users. Small businesses. So you have owners with limited legal support or even an HR structure who could face higher liability with fewer resources. Each of these industries carry real world stakes. Mistakes don't just result in lost productivity, they endanger lives. Now, it's clear employers were not consulted with this legislation when it was drafted. Their perspectives, concerns, and responsibilities were overlooked in favor of political momentum. This isn't just frustrating, it's so dangerous. Reform should be comprehensive. It should include not only criminal justice, but employer protections, workplace policies, and safety measures. Without them, we're not progressing. We're just shifting the risk to those least prepared to carry it. Now, employers can't afford to wait for the state to catch up. And here's what's happening right now: policy reviews. Employers should update their drug impairment policies to explicitly include psychedelics. Training. You need to have supervisors and managers that need to be educated on identifying signs of impairment. Legal consultation. We need to understand how new laws are going to interact with federal safety mandates, and this is critical. Documentation. A proactive, well documented approach can mitigate liability. And then there's collective advocacy. Industries must organize and demand a seat at the table in ongoing legislation. Ignoring these issues won't make them go away. And once something goes wrong, guys, it'll be too late to say, we didn't know. Now, this isn't just about public policy, it's about public trust. When someone is injured because an impaired worker had a flashback, it's not lawmakers who face that lawsuit, it's business owners, safety officers, and HR leaders. Imagine the call you never want to get. There's been an accident on site. Someone was acting strange. We think it's drug related. And in the aftermath, pointing to the state and saying they legalized it isn't going to protect you, your team, or your organization. That responsibility lands squarely on your shoulders. Now, reform that needs to be done that protects everyone. Now, we can support criminal justice reform and public health initiatives while also demanding that it doesn't come to at the expense of safety. These two goals are not mutually exclusive. So, it's time for lawmakers to involve the people managing the risk, the business owners, the HR teams, the risk managers, the safety directors. Without them, we're not building a better system. We're just pushing problems downstream. Now, I've got some final thoughts on this. And this issue goes far beyond Colorado. More states are following. More substances will be introduced and more communities will be affected. We need responsible reform that includes employers, protects workers, and respects the lives of people that have the stakes in this policy change. If this resonates with you, and if you're in construction, logistics, public safety, healthcare, or you simply just care about your community, you need to share this podcast. We need to get this conversation going because when the haze clears, it's not about left or right. It's about safe or sorry. Until next week, when we bring you another episode of Clearing the Haze, I'm your host, Chuck Marting. Take care.